And I mean, literally, me pouring those things out, the whole problem.
There you go.
Yeah, one of the things.
Oh, really? And they're all.
All filled up. Yeah.
How did you not look here?
People don't, but you don't really think about it. You don't think about it.
Yeah. Well, no, every year it's been a treat. But, now you have guards, guard think you guys okay?
He's doing great. So I could just stop using the acronyms that we use.
There's a lot.
He's just shaking his head. I keep apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, guard.
There's a lot.
A couple of years from now, you go, it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
I got it. No, he's been a great asset so far. Very
I know,
lucky.
that's what I said, I'm opening all those emails.
I'm very involved.
That's right.
Really wants to learn and not really live it. Very observant the community. As much as possible I can.
Yeah.
We're very
Over the years, like Greg Gonzaro, who's like a real expert in it. And we have Marie Heilman, and Marie, West Nile. Vern Bruin. Didn't we have Steve Godwin?
That was before my time. When I came on 15 years ago.
Okay.
Started working out.
Expired.
Yeah.
I have a. Oh, really? I think it was really good. I get a little bit bogged down in some of the financial stuff, but I love the science, and I think it was, I can't believe how progressive we are. And I can't believe how, even to the point from international from China, learn from it. That's really a compliment. Absolutely. That shows that we're very, really progressive. I'm very fortunate. Yeah. You're doing a good job. I mean, you really good. This is a program. Oh, really? Seriously? Oh. Well, that's true. Oh, you got a second minute. Oh, you said you're not doing second minutes. Oh. I see.
We'll call to order the meeting of the Winter City Council on Tuesday, May 21st. Tracy, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Councilmember Lauren. Here. And Councilmember New,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Callen,
Here.
and Mayor Biazzi.
Here. Thank you. Sharon, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Move on to the approval of the agenda.
Mayor and council, staff has one request that we pull discussion item number 2 from the agenda. Just, it's not ready for prime time, so just pull that and speak it back to the drawing board.
Okay. Any more changes? Is that it? We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passes unanimously. Let's see, we'll move on to council and staff comments. Councilmember Warren.
All right, it's a little busy time period, on May 8th, I served on a scholarship panel for Friends Without Borders. Those awards will be given tonight at high school. At a teleconference on May 8th with the Women's Caucus to work on an assembly bill. Along with my peers, on May 8th evening, I attended the emergency preparedness presentation, fire safety building with Dana Carey. On May 9th, at a phone meeting with a rural working group with Bismarck Obando from the League of Cities on revising our document. We had presented our document last month, and it will come to a vote in June, and so we're revising it to further it. At 5 o'clock, on May 9th, I was part of a large teleconference with the governor's office on the May revise, a lot of talk of housing. On May 10th, I attended the Sac Valley Region meeting for the League in Paradise. It was shocking to see the devastation even 6 months later. It's going to be a long road. On May 14th, I had a meeting with City Manager John Donlevy to plan for when the Sac Valley region will be coming to Winners, which is July 26th. It's a Friday. It would be great if all council could be there between 1:30 and maybe 4:30. I also attended the 2x2 with Mayor Biasi on that day. On May 16th, at a follow-up appointment with the League, where he instructed us when to submit our document, which was yesterday. And we'll see how that goes. On May 19th, I attended an event at the El Macero Country Club for Jesse Salinas, the county ace. On May 20th, I met with City Manager John Donlevy about tonight's agenda and about a meeting that he's attending tomorrow. I don't know if he wants to talk about that. And today I was asked to write a letter of support for SB 54 AB 1080, which is a plastics reduction pollution act that's moving forward in the Assembly and in the Senate. And that's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Start off on Thursday, May 9th. I attended a Lower Pewter Creek Coordinating Committee board meeting. 7 days. I participated in a training facility for FAMUS. On Monday, May 13th, in the afternoon, I attended the Yolo County Transportation District Board meeting in Woodland. And on Wednesday morning, May 15th, I attended the Air Quality Management District Board meeting in Davis. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember New.
On Wednesday, May 8th, along with many others from the City Council, I attended the emergency preparedness meeting. On Thursday, the 9th, I had a phone conference with Renewal Habitat Conservancy dealing with employee evaluation. On the 10th, I met with Stephanie Meyer at the library garden, talked about bat boxes and where they should go, things like that. On the 10th, Friday the 10th, I attended the groundbreaking for the Center for Land-Based Learning, and that was a very interesting event and well attended. They've got a lot of property out there and have what sounds to be a very good agenda of things that they're going to be doing, educating younger people that want to be farmers and working with them. On the 13th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce mixer. Someplace in there, I also attended the car show, but I can't remember what it was. On Wednesday, the 15th, I attended Elder Day Planning meeting. On the 15th also, I met with Joseph Agondo to talk about trash compactors and stuff. On the 16th, attended SACOG for morning, and we did talk about radar numbers and greenhouse gas, all that, as we usually do. On the 20th, had a phone conference again, Yolo Habitat Conservancy, and then later that evening had a Habitat meeting in Woodland. And this morning I met with John Dunleavy to discuss today's agenda. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Callen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On the 8th, I also attended the emergency preparedness meeting at the public safety facility. And the 11th, I attended the ribbon cutting for the Stones Throw development. And on the 13th, the Chamber Mixer del Pueblo, 14th, car show. 15th, a youth day meeting for pretty much just a debrief on how things went for Youth Day. And we want to thank Chief Miller for stopping by and chatting with us about how things went for him for Youth Day. And then on the 17th, we had the delayed Youth Day duck race. And it was won this year by last year's last place finisher, Bruce Golden. And second place was Teacher Karen from WPNS. And third place was Mark Rodriguez. And this year's last place finisher, I don't know who she is, but Melinda Myers. And she will receive 12 ducks in next year's race. So maybe next year she'll have at least one of them that can swim. Special thanks to Carol and Ed and one other gentleman whom I do not know. Who's that?
Joey Guerrero.
Okay. That helped out with the kayaks this year and rescuing all the ducks that couldn't find their way to the finish line. And on the 20th, I met with the city manager to review tonight's agenda. That's all I've had.
Thank you. On May 8th, I also attended the emergency preparedness meeting that was put on by Yolo County. On the 10th of May, I attended the chamber board meeting. On the 11th, I attended the ribbon cutting for the Stones Throw housing development. Their models are open if you want to see what some of the new homes are going to look like that are being built out there. I was very impressed with what I saw in I saw two of the models, and I think they did a very good job designing it. On the 12th, I witnessed the Amgen Tour of California Zoom through winners. Got us on TV. On the 13th, I attended the Chamber Mixer at El Pueblo. On the 14th, I participated in a conference call on the Yolo County City Selection Committee, which is the mayors of all the incorporated cities in Yolo County. Just matter of selecting people for various committees in the county. On the 14th, I attended the 2x2 with the Winter School District. Also attended the car show later that day. On the 17th, I witnessed the Duck Derby. On the 20th, I met with the city manager, and also on the 20th, I attended the Winters Pewter Creek Park Committee meeting. That's all I have. Thank you to everyone for all your time. A lot of committees, a lot of time spent besides these meetings, so thank you. All right, we will move on to public comments. All right, we will take public comment on anything that is not on the agenda. If you haven't done so already and you want to speak, you can fill out one of these papers that are in the back. I have several of them here. The first one is from Matthew Keys at the Winters Express.
Hi, as already stated, I'm Matt Keys with the Winters Express, and I'm both happy and sad to say this will probably be the last time I get to see all of you. As some of you are aware, I took a new job in Sacramento, so I actually already just do the Express. And I wanted to do two things. One, talk a little about my experience here, but also introduce you to the person that will be my replacement, and perhaps also make some recommendations that council or staff can take back and as part of our process of the paper. I will tell you, it is a lot easier in my head trying to plan out what I'm going to say than it is to actually get up here. So I try to keep that in mind when I'm covering the public and their public comments. The first time I spoke before the council was around this time last year. And as many of you know, and I don't feel particularly the need to rehash this, while I wish I took this job of city reporter on my merit, I actually inherited it because of some pretty tragic circumstances, and we're all familiar with what that was. We took the paper over the last year in a new direction. We existed largely as a community bulletin, and we've started doing a bit more watchdog journalism, which I know has caused some consternation and heartburn from the people that I personally covered in my capacity. Having said that, anybody that was covered in the paper was always fair when I made the approach for comment or question. And I would like to personally and professionally thank all of you if I had ever reached out to you for comment or question, for not only being willing to receive it, but also for responding in a timely manner and in a manner which helped me make deadline, which was important for our paper. I know that many of you have seen some of the criticism of our local government and people who make it up. In part, that is due to our coverage, I suppose. And I would like to let the public know that you have a great team of people representing your local government. You really do. Probably the biggest thing that I'm saddest about in terms of leaving this job is that I won't get to interact with more of you more often. And hopefully in the new role, I'll be able to come down here and cover some of the wonderful things that you're doing for this city. And that's not to take away from any of the really tough questions that I've had to ask or some of the tough coverage that I've had to write in the paper, but really, it's a good group. Everybody that's here, everybody that's taken on the role of city council member or city clerk, or city manager, or anything to do with the city is here because they love this community. That's not lost on me. Frankly, some of the stories that we had to publish make for some very rough nights in my household where sleep was hard to come by. And I didn't have to deal with the fallout quite as much as some of the people who were covered in the paper. So thank you. Nobody ever held a grudge. I know that I probably would have if I was in your position. And that is a testament to the professionality of everybody sitting before me, including the council members. Again, it's tough to remember that when you're up here. As I mentioned, I've taken on a new role in Sacramento, and I'd like to introduce you to the person who will be replacing me. And as I mentioned in my first comments, I couldn't replace Julia, and that wasn't what I sought out to do. I would have hoped that I would have made her proud and following in her footsteps. But I can tell you that the person sitting next to me tonight who will be studying what I do and the procedure of the council, his name is Brandon McCapes. He's a very good journalist. I've had a chance to review his resume and his portfolio. He's an award-winning reporter. He won awards at a younger age than I did, so already I'm jealous. Brandon comes to us from the North Bay, where he covered a number of really big stories, including the Santa Rosa fire from some years ago. In fact, as I was, I guess you could say, stalking his portfolio online, I came across a mention of him in the Columbia Journalism Review, which is a very prestigious journalism magazine. So that's the kind of reporter you're getting. If any of you thought it was going to get easier, sorry to report, it probably won't. Brandon brings a very vast portfolio of experience, and I think the community is very lucky to have him. I know our company is. To that, as far as the experience that I've had working at the paper, I can tell you that while everybody has been fair, there have been some pushback from some officials in local government. And what I would like to remind everybody going forward, and I don't know that I'm still on as a staff reporter at large, so I'll be writing coverage tonight, and I'll be writing coverage of the Planning Commission and probably making the same speech before them that I'm making before you. That's why I have to go last, but that's okay. I would like to remind everybody that when they're speaking to us, they're speaking to the community. They're speaking to our readers. And while we are a business, the thing we primarily trade on is trust and reputation. That's why we took the paper in a new direction. That's why as the city is growing up, we felt it was important for as the city is growing bigger, we felt it was important for the newspaper to grow up. The response from the community has been overwhelmingly positive. It wasn't at first, it has been now. And we will continue to take the paper in that direction. I would hope that everybody who encounters Brandon or any of our reporters would remember that when they're speaking to us or choosing not to speak to us, as is their right, they're actually speaking to the community at large and speaking to our readers or choosing not to. So anyway, At the end of the meeting, I would love, if any of you would like to meet with Brandon one-on-one or would like to say goodbye to me, we'll make ourselves available to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see that request on there to be the last speaker.
That's okay.
Sorry.
We don't get to pick that, so.
Okay, up next, I have a request from Abraham Lopez. We're gonna talk about the 2-hour street parking sign on Main Street.
That's right.
Welcome.
I have a complaint about the 2-hour parking on Main Street at the Buckhorn Catering and the all Fitness Club. Since you people have put this 2-hour parking there, no one parks there hardly ever. And they all parking across the street where I live and a few other people, residential homes. And I can't even park in front of my house. None of my family can park there. Or it's just, everyone has taken up that and they work there all day long in these places. And I just wonder if something else can be done besides the putting 2-hour parking there, so these people are not plugging up all the other side of the street. That's it.
Great, thank you. We can't really have any discussion on it tonight. We can hear your input because it wasn't on the agenda. We can't have a discussion with you on it, but we can direct our staff to look into seeing what can be done as far as,
I appreciate it.
what are the options of those areas through there.
Thanks.
City manager, you want to address anything?
No, you know what, Mr. Lopez, maybe you can talk with Eric back there before you leave. If you have any ideas on what you think would be a solution for your area, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because we took the 2-hour parking off on your side of the street to try and accommodate you. But I think what that's done is it's shifted everybody to park on your side of the street.
Now there's nobody parking on this side where the 2 hours are.
I got that.
90% of the time it's empty.
Well, no, if you got some ideas, and we'll definitely talk with you and see what we can do. We'll try and work that out.
Thank you. Next we have Kate Laddish.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here with that's right, I need to say who I am and where I live. Kate Laddish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21. And I'm here with, yet again, a pool update, but there's a whole lot of really good news coming from the pool. And so I wanted to pass that along and also let everybody know, everybody who's here know about it. So first is that we have a new manager, Tammy Jo, whose last name I'm not going to say right. Maybe Tracy can help me. Schlunz. Tammy Jo Schlunz started last week and has absolutely hit the ground running. I mean, she's taken inventories of different AEDs that may be around and available. I mean, it's fantastic. And let's see, lifeguard training started this weekend to grow our hometown crop of lifeguards. And let's see, signups for summer swim teams started this past weekend with Bobby Greenwood and with Coach Aaron Vandeweghe. And a very big thanks to Eric Lucero and his staff for fixing a problem that's been going on with the heater. We especially appreciate this since we're having a little bit of March coming back into our weather right now. And so we like having the pool heated. And lap swim turnout continues to be robust with people enthusiastic. And the summer swim season starts on May 31st. And so that's when rec swim starts 7 days a week from 2 to 5 p.m. I think it's just $2 a swim again this year. And lap swim during the week, we'll have a noon lap swim time as well. And from 12 to 1:30 as well as the 6 to 8 p.m. So that's during the week, as well as the 9 to 11 on weekends. And summer swim team starts soon after then. And I think lessons start probably that next Monday, if I remember right. So, and last but very much not least, a very big thanks to Tracy Johnson for everything she's doing for this. As I was leaving the pool to come here, somebody said, thank Tracy for us. So this is an official thank you from, not just me, but everybody else who's still there and marinating in Chloride. So thanks again.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, let's see. The other form that I have here is from Jeff Tenbass, and he wants to comment on items B and K on the consent calendar, so I'll wait until city manager gives an introduction to the consent calendar, and we can speak up. Is that okay? Keeping with that, please?
Sure, I can get the reports and then
Yeah.
Jeff can make his public comment.
Any other comments from the public that are not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
All right, Mayor, Council, a couple of items. Item A are the minutes from the May 7th regular meeting. Items B and C have to do with the citywide assessment district. Item B is a resolution initiating proceedings for the annual levy of the collection. Just to remember, there's no cost escalator in the assessment district, so there's no change. Item C is the engineer's report. That's the report which essentially goes through, inventories all the properties within the assessment area and certifies the overall assessment. Item D is an amendment to our agreement with the Solano County Water Agency. Throughout our section of the creek, they want to put in a variety of monitoring wells that they'll put in for probably a period of about 5 years. They're going to do some monitoring down there. Item E is a consultant services agreement with Harrison Associates as we continue on the undergrounding project for Newts Expressway and the Route 28. Item F is just approval of a contract for a citywide leak survey. Essentially, we're going to go through, the company will monitor throughout our entire distribution system and see what kind of leaks that we can find. We estimate that we're losing about 14% of our water between the wellhead and delivery, so they'll go and look at that. Item G is a budgetary item that is establishing essentially what they call our GAN limit for the upcoming 2019-2020 fiscal year. Item H is council approving the submittal of our claim for our Transportation Development Act funding. This funds two key areas. One is it funds the bus that goes through Winters, and the second is that it provides some road maintenance money. Item I is an agreement with HDL Corn and Corn for going through and doing a property tax management and information service for us. Essentially, they're going to look at two property tax areas. One will be the city of Winters, and the second will be the Winters Fire District area. And the reason for the audit is basically to do very similar to what we do with our sales tax. They go through, they do a pretty in-depth analysis. They look for any errors in the reporting. So we're recommending this. Property taxes are number one revenue. So having somebody going through and doing this type of audit will help. Item J and K are both awards of bids and construction contracts. Item J is for paving of the alley behind the Hotel Winters. Item K is for the actual construction and paving of the parking lot, which will go on First Street and Abbey Street. And that is the consent calendar.
Okay, so Councilmember Anderson has a conflict with item K on the agenda due to having property in proximity to the project.
Conflict is item B, Route 28 underground district.
Right, based on the ownership of the same property.
Yeah, that's property
also be for item J for the alley paving?
So that actually, that contract is actually for general street maintenance. The item K is both the alleyway and the parking lot.
Okay, thank you for clarification. So conflict with items K and E. All right, Jeff Tenpass, would you like to comment on items D and items K? You submitted?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff Penpass, 24 East Main Street. I just, on item D, it's an interesting project going on there that now we're going to get some monitoring of groundwater levels along the creek, and it's an issue that I've been interested in and I've been trying to get some follow-up on for quite a while. There's some strong indications that our groundwater levels by winters have been dropping and since the creek projects have gone on, and there's a pretty strong connection between the drop in groundwater levels and the creek. I'm glad we're following up now with some monitoring. I totally support it, and I urge you to keep it keep it on your radar, and when the results come out, I see that there was sort of a vague promise that you could get the results. No promise that you would get an annual report or anything, so I would urge you to be asking, looking for it and asking for it. It might interest you. And that's it for that. I'll be looking for that. The other, I guess, the item K I put on the agenda just because it was kind of, the agenda item didn't really tell us what was going on, and it said under separate cover, and there was no separate cover that ever came to us. Since we didn't have an agenda item on, I'm just wondering, so it sounds like it's for paving of the parking lot and the alley behind, and Newt's alleyway. And I guess, can I direct a question and ask what the cost is?
City manager?
Yeah, it's 188,000.
181 for the parking lot.
Yeah, 181,000 for the parking lot.
And the alley is?
155.
155.
Okay. And this is all coming out of our, I guess, out of our, what fund is it coming out of?
Multiple sources. One comes out of, is we set up for the improvement of things. Some of it comes from proceeds from the sale of the property when we did that. And part of it comes out of our road maintenance.
Very good.
Thank you. Other comments from the council? I'll move for a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar with the.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. As we move along, next up, we have a proclamation recognizing June 1st, 2019 as Elder Day in the city of Winters. This will be presented to Wally Pierce by Councilmember Noon and Councilmember Lawrence, since they are on the Elder Day Committee. We'll give you the honors.
Wherever you're
Where do you want?
Okay.
Don't make him go far.
All right, I have a proclamation from the City Council, of the City of Winters, celebrating May 20th as Older Americans Month. Whereas the City of Winters includes a community of older Americans who deserve recognition for their contributions to our nation and community. And whereas the City of Winters recognizes that older adults are trailblazers, advocating for themselves, their peers, and their communities, paving the way for future generations. And whereas the City of Winters is committed to raising awareness about the issues facing older Americans and helping all individuals to thrive in communities of their choice for as long as possible. And whereas we greatly appreciate the value of inclusion and support in helping older adults successfully contribute to and benefit from their community. And whereas our community can provide opportunities to enrich the lives of individuals of all ages by promoting and engaging in activities, wellness, and social involvement, emphasizing home and community-based services that support independent living, ensuring community members can benefit from the contributions and experiences of older adults.
Now therefore, we of the City of Winters do hereby proclaim May 2019 to be Older Americans Month. We urge every resident to take time this month to acknowledge older adults and the people who serve them as powerful and vital individuals who greatly contribute to our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Wally.
Thank you, Wally. You get that. Yeah, you get
He doesn't want to let it go.
$2.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the annual mosquito and West Nile virus update by Gary Goodman, District Manager, Sacramento Yellow Mosquito Vector Control District.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come out. I apologize for not being Luz Maria Robles, who's the native daughter here in Winters. Unfortunately, to get me, she wasn't able to make it today. But my name is Gary Goodman. I'm the district manager for the Sacramento Yellow Mosquito Vector Control District, and we cover vector control for all of Sacramento and all of Yolo County. We have our main offices down in Elk Grove, and we also have a satellite office in Woodland, and I'm sure the community here is probably familiar with Danny Bickle, who covers the Winters area for you guys on a daily basis. So,
There's a little button on the side.
oh, there we go. Okay. So our district comprises just over about 2,000 square miles. So it's a very large district, or one of the largest districts in all of California. Within California, there's about 60 different mosquito and vector control districts. Wherever you, for the most part, you have a level of population, you have a mosquito vector control district trying to lower nuisance from mosquitoes and, of course, public health. And our area is very diverse from the perspective of, in Sacramento County, we have a large population, almost 1.5 million people. Yolo County is about 300,000. And clearly a lot more agriculture in Yolo County, but still quite a bit. And we go all the way down into Delta. And then you guys are situated right there on the other side of Solano County with Cuda Creek and a lot of other agriculture that produces mosquitoes. And then essentially you guys are almost like this small island, like Woodland, Davis, Winters, areas where you have are surrounded by agriculture, produces a lot of mosquitoes, and when those mosquitoes hatch up, they want to come to where all the lights are and all the people are. So it's a challenge for us trying to be able to find where everything is going to be situated. So some habitat, very easy for us to spot when you look out there. Rice fields are a big issue for us, wetlands, these large irrigation dishes, we can drive by, we can see the standing water, we can see the vegetation interface, and we can take care of these things. But one of the bigger challenges that we have, oops, I'm going the opposite way, is some of the backyard sources. It's difficult for us to see in people's backyards. One of the, especially right after these recent rains that we just had, a lot of buckets, a lot of other things that are in people's backyards that we try to ask folks to drain on a month or on a weekly basis so they're not breeding mosquitoes. Very difficult for us to find. We have an active swimming pool program throughout the district's boundaries where we visit about 7,000 to 8,000 swimming pools a year. But with just one bad swimming pool that's turned green like this produces thousands of mosquitoes that have an impact on an entire neighborhood. And so one of the challenges that we ask the general public is to try to help us out with that. If you're being bothered by mosquitoes, please take a look around your yard, but for the most part, give us a call. We'll come out. We typically come out within 24 hours, and we want to make sure that we're looking around and taking care of that problem as quickly as we can. But these are one of the bigger challenges that we have, and specifically right after it's May, and we just had that huge downpour that filled in a lot of containers for us. So it's a big issue. We follow what we call an integrated mosquito management approach. The first is public information. We do a lot of fairs, events. We've come out to Winters on a couple of different occasions where we set a booth up and try to get information out to the public. We have a very active social media campaign, advertising campaign. You'll hear us on the radio, we do television, all of those types of things. Because essentially we're trying to let the public know what they can do to protect themselves from mosquitoes, not breeding mosquitoes, and then of course, diseases that mosquitoes can carry. Then we go into our surveillance program. We set traps throughout the district. We have different types of traps because worldwide, there's about 3,500 different species of mosquitoes. Not all of them transmit disease. In our area here, we have about 22 different species, and some of them do transmit disease. And so we're going to set traps around the district and try to essentially monitor the population. Are the populations increasing? Are they decreasing? Do we have a certain species of mosquitoes that we need to be more concerned about? And then, of course, we're testing those mosquitoes to see if they're carrying virus and do we have active virus transmission in a particular area. Our biological control program at our facility down in Elk Grove, we have 23 ponds, very large ponds, that we breed mosquito fish in. We plant those mosquito fish free of charge in areas like rice fields, wetlands, irrigation ditches, horse troughs, wherever they're going to survive. And they do a very good job of taking care of mosquito larvae. And so they're a very good control measure for us. We plant about over 3,000 pounds of fish per year. We're probably the largest mosquito fish breeding facility in the country. So very proud of that particular program. And if you have an area where you might be think that mosquito fish would be viable, just give us a call. Again, we typically come out within 24 hours and we'll plant those fish if we think that they're going to be a good source for you. Then we go into our ecological management department. This is where we work actively with landowners, specifically U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, California Fish and Wildlife, Nature Conservancy, wetland owners, but also farmland owners that may have some area on their property where they're breeding mosquitoes, where the water's not backing up. So we actually have a dump truck and a backhoe will do some of that work. We work with the landowner to be able to try to facilitate so they're not breeding mosquitoes on their own property. And so it's one of the services that we provide. Also in our ecological management program, we're very active on drone technology or unmanned area, we should say UAS, unmanned aerial systems. Nobody likes the word drone. But we use these units for both for surveillance to be able to try to go up in the air, see where water may be standing, but we're also starting to actually make treatments with these UAS systems as well. So an innovative program that we're expanding and see quite a bit of a use for. So that's another part of our ecological management program. And then the last part of our IPM is doing chemical control. So when Danny comes out here and he's looking for that standing water, he's treating that. We try to get the mosquitoes in their larval stage, in the aquatic stage. So mosquitoes breathe in water. If the water is moving like Poudre Creek that's kind of moving through, you're not really going to have mosquitoes that are breeding there. It's when that water is stagnated and has a vegetation interface that the mosquitoes can hide. And so if he's coming out and he's doing chemical control, we have products that are specifically designed just to kill mosquitoes. Essentially, mosquitoes ingest it, and then they kind of get sick and they get stomach ulcers and they die. Probably a little bit more than what you wanted to know, but that's how it works. We also have adult mosquito control. So when we get large populations of mosquitoes, so when our populations start to rise in a particular area, or if we start to get virus in a particular area, then we'll start to do adult mosquito control. And that's anywhere from a backpack to an ATV to a pickup truck to an airplane. We've had a history of doing that. And specifically here, just northeast of you guys, there's now a number of rice fields that are starting to come up. And that's a big source for us, and we do a lot of aerial applications to try to control the mosquito populations over those rice fields. So why do we do this? Partly is because mosquitoes can carry disease. The West Nile virus is the most prevalent disease in the United States. It's being vectored by mosquitoes. It started in 1999 in New York City, and within 4 years steadily made its way across the country. And West Nile virus is a bird disease. It's actually carried by birds and then vectored by mosquitoes. So a mosquito bites an infected bird, picks up the disease, then bites another bird, passes it on, or can pass it on to a human. And so we end up being dead end host, but it is a bird disease. And so unfortunately in the valley here, we have the right mix of the right types of birds that host the virus and the right types of mosquitoes that can transmit it. So West Nile virus for us is not going to go away. And that's what we want to try to make sure that the public is aware of basic things that they can do to try to make sure to protect themselves from these types of diseases. But there are a number of other diseases that mosquitoes can vector: dengue, malaria, chikungunya, Zika virus is in the news the last couple of years, and then dog heartworm. So we want to make sure, specifically in the springtime, is when dog heartworm comes out. There's a specific mosquito that breeds in tree holes. So when you see those little knots or tree holes, the little cavity in the trees, that rainwater that comes in the spring, the particular type of mosquito lays its egg in those tree holes, and then when it fills up with water, then they come out and they can transmit dog heartworm. So make sure that you're protecting your pets. In general, West Nile virus activity in California last year was quite a bit of a dip. We only had about 218 cases in all of California. I want to try to highlight this number is a bit misleading. It doesn't necessarily sound that much, but Over 70% of these cases are actually what we call the more serious neuroinvasive form of the disease, which leads to encephalitis, blindness, and potentially even death as well. And so a lot of these cases go unreported. So CDC estimates that for every neuroinvasive form of the disease, you have anywhere from 30 to 70 people that are infected with West Nile and just haven't been diagnosed. Because a lot of times people get the flu, and the typical symptoms for West Nile are flu-like symptoms. And you may I'm just going to stay in bed, I'm going to drink orange juice, I'm going to rest, and then you start to recover from it. Well, actually, you're having implications from West Nile. And so a lot of times, essentially, it goes underreported. So really what you're talking about is tens of thousands of people on an annual basis in California that are impacted by West Nile. So we want to make sure that people recognize it is a very serious disease. It can be a very serious disease, and to take the appropriate measures to try to protect yourself. Here's winners from last year. This was West Nile virus activity that we saw last year. So you guys did a great job. Thank you for dumping out all your standing water. We didn't have any positive mosquito activity here in winter, so well done. You're the only incorporated city within Sacramento or Yolo County that had no activity last year, so kudos to you. As you can see, as you start to move a little bit east, you can see quite a bit of activity that we had in Davis. Feel free to tease them about that particular aspect. But on an annual basis, we do tend to pick up virus activity in and around winters, and so last year was a bit of an anomaly. We tend to get that information. When we do, we'll reach out and try to give you a notice, let you know what it is that we're doing. You can always get information from our website, but essentially the big focus is to try to make sure that people are aware that there's potential virus in their area and to try to take the various measures to protect themselves. So what is 2019 going to bring? Well, this was a little bit of a different slide before last week when we had the whole rain came through. But these recent rains are going to be a big problem for us. Essentially, everything that was dried up is no longer dry, and so those mosquitoes are going to start coming off in droves. And what's interesting, actually, is when we have, now that we're kind of out of the drought, we had our largest or busiest, essentially, virus activity years in drought years, which is a bit counterintuitive. You think, well, if we have less water, we'll have less mosquitoes, and so therefore we have less disease. But unfortunately, because West Nile virus is a bird disease, wherever you did have water, you had the congregation of both birds and mosquitoes in the same place. And what ended up happening is amplified the amount of virus that we had. So when we have a drought, or without a drought, and we have plenty of water, while we have more mosquito sources, so our populations are probably going to increase, we're hoping that the trend continues and we'll actually have less virus activity. And that's what we've seemed to experience over the last 2 years, and that's what we're hopefully, knock on wood, anticipating for this upcoming season. But still, we may have higher populations, hopefully have less virus activity, but we still want people to be aware and make sure they're taking appropriate measures. The other challenge that we have, and the two pictures there are two different types of mosquitoes. If you're an entomologist, you would know that immediately. If you're not an entomologist, they probably looks very similar. These are the Aedes albopictus and Aedes aegypti mosquitoes. These are invasive mosquitoes. These are typically found in South America, Central America, Mexico, and they're starting to make their way up and be established in California. We have populations that are established in Southern California and all the way up to as close to us as Madera, which is a very similar habitat and climate as what we have here in the Central Valley. They're concerned with these particular mosquitoes. They're not supposed to be here, but they're starting to become established, and these can be efficient vectors of those very exotic diseases like malaria, chikungunya, and Zika. And so if we get these mosquitoes established here, we may have local transmission of those diseases. And so that's something we want people to be aware of. The difference between these particular species of mosquitoes, most mosquitoes that we currently have in the valley tend to bite in the morning and the evening. We say dawn and dusk. That's when mosquitoes start to come out. These particular mosquitoes are day biters. So they are active around populations. They like to cohabitate. They like to go inside your house. So if you're being bothered by mosquitoes in the middle of the day, give us a call. We want to know. We'll set appropriate traps. We'll try to see if we get these established mosquitoes, if we can detect them. So far, we've had an active program over the last 6 years trying to look for these. We have yet to find them. It doesn't mean that they're not here. It just means that they're crafty. So if you're being bitten by daytime mosquitoes, give us a call. Let us know. We'll come out and do some inspections for you. So what do we ask? What do we ask of the general public? So we say to try to follow the 7 Ds of prevention. So the first one, drain any standing water. Make sure you're not breeding mosquitoes in your own property. And if you are being bothered by mosquitoes, give us a call. Dawn and dusk are times to avoid being outdoors. That's when the mosquitoes that transmit West Nile are most active. So If you can avoid going outside during those times, please do so. If you do have to go outside, dress in long sleeves. I dress in long sleeves all the time, also because I'm a ginger and I get sunburned all the time. But you want to make sure that you have the less amount of skin that you have exposed, the less chance you have of being bitten. If you can't do that, then defend yourself with an effective repellent. We buy these repellent packets by the pallet. They're free of charge. All you have to do is let us know that you want some, and we'll be more than happy to deliver them. So if you have an outdoor event, specifically activities in the park, movies in the park, all of those other types of things where people are going to be out at dawn and dusk, let us know. We'll be more than happy to provide the repellent for you. Doors and screens should be in good working order. Mosquitoes essentially find you by following the carbon dioxide stream that you breathe out. That's how they know that there's a host. And actually only female mosquitoes bite. Male mosquitoes only feed on nectar. Female mosquitoes are looking for the protein in your blood so that they can lay their eggs. But they're picking up that carbon dioxide. So in the evening time, when you have these nice delta breezes and we want to open up the house, you want to make sure your doors and screens are in good working order because mosquitoes are small and they'll find their way in. And then again, the last D that we have is district personnel. If you're being bothered by mosquitoes, if you see standing water, if you know somebody who has a bad pool or whatever that may be, give us a call. Again, we typically come out within 24 hours. We want to take care of the problem as quickly as we can so that we don't have to go into adult mosquito control aspect. We want to try to find it in its larval phase as quickly as we can. So with that, if the council has any questions. All right, great. So you can get more information on our website, fightthebite.net, or give us a call, 1-800-429-1022.
Got a question. So if you, is West Nile like the chickenpox, if you've had it, or you've been exposed to it? Because this has been going on for a while, and we originally had a number of cases here in town.
Right.
Is there any chance that maybe we've all been exposed to it and we're good?
It is possible. So essentially, because it's a virus, and any virus that comes into your system, your body wants to fight it off immediately, right? Start sending out all the signals to be able to fight that virus off. And if it's successful, then it knows how to do that. So then if you're reinfected with the same virus, your body kind of has this memory system to be able to try to fight it off. So the short answer is yes, and then we don't know. So what are the long-term effects of having to battle that particular disease? And unfortunately, for us, there wasn't a lot of history that has been done on West Nile virus, and because it's only been in the United States for 20 years, which seems like a long time, it's difficult to try to figure out what are the long-term impacts for your health. If you got bitten and had impacts from West Nile 20 years ago, what is that going to do today, or what is that going to do another 10 years from now? So there are some, clearly it tends to have an impact on older folks because essentially your immune system is not quite as strong. The young also can be very impacted very quickly and heading into more of that serious neuroinvasive form of the disease. One other study that came out is that if you're a diabetic, sometimes you'll experience symptoms more so than someone who's not. So that's another concern. So we're just starting to, from a medical standpoint, learn more about what the long-term effects of West Nile are. But typically, yes, for a virus, if your body knows how to fight it off, it will continue to try to fight it off if it's reintroduced to it.
Okay.
And then I want to thank you for your our board member, Gar House, recently on the board for the last few months, has learned quite a lot, I hope. He's very active. He asks a lot of questions. He really wants to get involved. And so he's an excellent addition to our board. And I want to thank you for appointing him to us.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman, and Mr. House, thank you for your.
You're very welcome. I just want to add to that.
Yes.
We are very fortunate to have Gary leading our district. He's really a progressive leader. The whole staff actually is very innovative in its research and what it does. So we're very fortunate. They do such things even as bringing in international people. They're really progressive, and we're very fortunate. So,
Thank you. Thank you. We'll all do our part and jump out any standing water, all you have any mosquitoes.
Absolutely. Please do so.
Thank you. All right, moving on to discussion items. The first one we have tonight is an overview of the waste management residential overage/contamination fee program.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight we're asking you just to kind of receive information from Waste Management. We have Kayla and Hannah here. They're going to be talking about rolling out the new program. we approved, the implementation of using the contamination and overseas back in, November of last year. And we're trying to roll it out June first. We're trying to get an education program out to residents so that they can avoid these charges. Recycling is becoming a lot tougher because of the, less, markets available to us. So we have to be a lot more diligent on what we're putting in our recycling and composting bins. So we'll take it away. Okay, take it away.
Good evening, council. So as Carol said, I'm just here to kind of update everybody on a new program that's coming out. Just to provide some background information, answer any questions that you guys have. I do have a quick PowerPoint, and then I can answer any questions that you guys have at the end. And I'm gonna try to learn how to work this into. Okay, not supposed to be a video, but I don't think it's gonna show.
Tracy, can you try?
There we go. It has sound, I don't know. Kind of boring without sound. I don't know how to do that.
Technical difficulty.
Might be the TV.
We'll narrate it for you.
Well, there's one of our guys picking up the trash. So more or less, this is just an overview video of kind of the services and what it is and why this program we strongly believe in, and why a lot of jurisdictions throughout Northern California and Nevada have implemented this program. And so we'll just kind of skip through. Here it's kind of showing you some of the contamination that's coming out of a container and into the back of the truck. So we have cameras now on all of our trucks and they have different views. So as you'll see a video, hopefully later on, if it works, of a container being serviced, and then you'll see the front view of it, and then you'll also be able to see all the material inside of the container being dumped inside the bin. And from there, we're able to monitor and see what types of different contamination are going inside. All right. So here we are piloting a proprietary technology. We actually designed this technology and now it's being implemented corporate-wide throughout the country. So it was designed here, it's implemented here, so all of our jurisdictions are able to get this technology first. Some of you may have heard, we've had a little bit of hiccup, as with any technology that's new, but we have fixed a lot of those and we are currently still working on some other little bugs that we find. But it's all in real time, which is amazing. So, and it also leverages GPS, so that's how we're able to track the customers. So all the monitors and on the cameras are all GPS. So some of you may have heard that when there's community bins, it gets a little bit hard. So that's one of the bugs that we're working through. And what I mean by community bins, if there's 6 bins all in one parking lot and they're all being serviced at the same time, sometimes it will ping a GPS to a different customer. So one customer's bin may be associated with another business. And so as soon as we hear about that, we actually go in and code it and fix it. So then in the future, it won't happen. And as I mentioned, this is being used throughout almost every single city and county throughout Northern California and Nevada. So what are the benefits of this? Well, you get to identify customers for repair and graffiti. So our ultimate goal as well is to be able to take care of this before the customer has to call us. So we want to be able to get out there and be proactive and fix wheels, fix lids before the customer realizes it or before the customer finds the time to call us and send in a ticket for the repair. So we're actually able to see whether bins have lids on them, whether the card's broken, whether there's graffiti, whatever that is, that's going to be phase 2. And so we want to actually be able to tell the customer, hey, we went ahead and fixed this for you. You didn't even have to bother to call us. We want to let you know it's taken care of. Recognize driver coaching opportunities. So the drivers have no privacy in their cabs, which is a good thing, right? Because we want to be able to coach them on any opportunities that we see, whether it's service related or they're doing something that's going to cause a safety issue for themselves or the customers that we're servicing. And monitoring containers and closures for right sizing. So this has been a huge thing as well. And I'll get into this a little bit later. But because of this program, customers are now right sizing the bins, meaning that instead of wanting to pay for a smaller bin because it's cheaper and just stuff as much trash in there as they can, they're now not able to get away with that. And they are now having to pay for the container that's the right size for their establishment and can hold the amount of trash that they're producing. So we've actually seen a huge increase in sizing and a big decrease down in warnings and charges because customers would rather just pay for the service level that they need versus paying for the charges. Safety, create more efficient routing to reduce carbon emissions. Permit driving to focus only on providing safe service by automating service validation. The drivers no longer have to use the old school system, tablets, take pictures, get out of their cars or their cabs to provide those types of service or to document those things. Everything now is done through the technology that we have, and the driver can just focus on efficiency and safety. Sustainability. This is also a reason to help prevent water storm drainage pollution. The less litter you have on your streets, the cleaner your storm drains are going to be. Also identify diversion opportunities. Who has recycling, who has organics? As we know, the state loves to mandate assembly bills. We have AB 341, AB 1826, and now SB 1383 is in the works. So this is also, again, being a little bit proactive and making sure we get on top of that and work with each of our jurisdictions to implement those. Track contamination and educate the customer. We're now able to see who are big repeat offenders. And it's not that we want to, single out anybody, but we're actually able to identify those customers and go in and do site visits and meet with those customers. Maybe they just don't understand what's recyclable, what's not. Maybe they don't understand what's contaminating their loads. So we're actually able to go in, look at the reports, reach out to those customers, bring them literature, bring them brochures, and really just work with them one-on-one, which is nice because they get that face-to-face interaction with us as well. So winter specifically, coming June 1st, we are rolling out the residential program. Commercial rolled out December of last year. So we'll be able to go through some of those stats that I have for you guys. So commercial is rolling out. You guys may have received your letters this weekend. So you'll also see that in your guys' packet I gave you, as well as the commercial letter that went out. And on the back of those letters was an FAQ for any questions, the recently asked questions about this program and some of the questions that we had come across. You'll also find in there an educational flyer that's going to be sent out with every warning and charge letter. So again, like to my point, the customer may not know what's recyclable, what's not, and what's contamination. So that educational flyer will be with every warning and charge letter. Some new improvements that we have. All the letters will be in color with a colored picture. And the letter is generated within 48 hours of the incident happening. So the letter will be sent out and you should receive it within a few days of the incident occurring. And again, this is all real time. So from the morning to the next morning, the incident's reviewed, it's assessed, marked valid or invalid, and then the letter is going to be sent. And then another cool thing that we've worked on is a drop-down menu. So the auditors are going to review the pictures and be able to choose from a drop-down menu what items were in your cart or bin that were contaminated. So whether it's styrofoam, whether it's, paint, hypothetically, whatever caused that contamination, trash bags is the biggest one. We're doing a lot of education on that. A lot of people didn't know you cannot put bags in your recycling. So that's another item. So that's gonna help educate the customers as well. And as I mentioned, that flyer that's in your guys' packet will be sent with every letter. So residents get one warning. So they'll receive a warning letter letting them know this is your warning. This is what was contaminated, or this was your overage. The next one will be a charge, and the charge is $10.99. So this is just stats for our overall market area. So since this has began, and this is across, like I said, our market area. So we have 66 franchise agreements. Throughout most of them, we saw a decrease 50% in the first 4 months of charges and incidents being recorded. Overage incidents dropped by 30% within the first 4 months as well. So we've, again, had a dramatic decrease month over month throughout the entire area. And because of this decrease, we've actually been able to right-size the customers. And we do have people that make phone calls, review the reports, and reach out to the customers as well. So we're always working with the customer. So winter specifically, I wanted to provide you guys some stats. So contamination. In January, there were 89 contamination charges. And this is commercial stats. In May, there was only 10 so far. For overage, January, there was 109 overage charges, and now we're down to just 49. So it's a pretty significant decrease. And these were established, the overage was established before I came along, contamination right about when I came along. So there's no warning systems in place for these charges, but it has been very effective. I did meet with the business association, and Bill and John were there as well, and I was able to talk to a lot of the business owners. And one of the biggest things was they didn't have locks. So as soon as we had that discussion, the calls and emails I received almost subsided as soon as the people got locks. It helped with illegal dumping. It helped with people just walking by and throwing any type of contamination in there. So that's helped a lot. So it's simple things that we do work with the customers, the business owners, just to help them. But as you can see, it's been a pretty significant decrease. Contamination dropped by about 89%, overages about 56%, sorry. And this is an example of an overage in the city of Winters in the downtown area. So we've seen that a couple of times for some of the businesses. But we're working through those with the customers, and hopefully we'll be able to come to a solution soon. All right, and then as I mentioned, there's several cameras. There's cameras that are forward, backward, and side view of service. So there's like almost a 360-degree angle. The cameras are triggered by the motion of the truck. Their GPS coordinate and links the services to the customer's addresses. Mounted camera captures point of service images as well. So as well as a video, there's also a camera picture. And both are available to the customer at any time they call and request it. Some businesses have received the email with the link. They just click the link and can view the video right then and there. And again, we record broken containers, missed set outs. This is going to be huge when we roll it out in residential. Customers sometimes have a missed service or a missed pickup. We're able to go in and verify that now, and then send a driver back out, whether it's that same day or next day to get that service. Overfilled containers and service hazards we'll be able to see as well. Sometimes you get the call, oh, I had it out, or there were a bunch of cars out. We'll be able to verify all of that information as well, just overall provide a better service for our customers. This is a video. It looked like it was playing. So the video is supposed to show, it's really slow, the bin going up and dumping, which is the point of view. So as soon as that arm lifts is when the camera's triggered. So then you see the arm lifting and picking, and then all of a sudden you can go to the next view and it will show all the material dumping into the back of the truck. But it doesn't look like it's gonna work. So if you guys want the PowerPoint with the cameras, I can show you. I'll send it to you. This is just some of the outreach that you guys have received. This is some of the, oh, you didn't get the updated one. Okay, well, I had to send her an updated one of the residential stuff, but it doesn't look like she got it. But it's just some of the same material that you guys have in your packets. But the one to the left is what commercial customers receive who signed up for email. So this is what the email looks like, letting them know that you had an overage or contamination. They can go in and click that link and view the video. And this has been very helpful too for us as well, because if the customer recognizes this isn't their bin, I've actually gotten emails. I've been able to verify that. I credit the customer immediately, put in that request, and then we're able to fix our GPS and coordinates. So the video is very helpful. And then as well, we're also going out there and being proactive. We're marking the bins, we're putting the addresses, we're putting the business names on it, so it's clearly identified as well. Does anyone have any questions for me? I think that was the last.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, what you were doing to reach out, using social media. I know that you've done some stuff with television, but for those of us who don't have television and just watch stuff on, Charter or whatever, what kind of outreach are you doing to people, maybe Facebook and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we actually have been creating kind of a huge outreach campaign. So a lot of it's the mailers, the brochures. We also purchased and created, I'm not sure what you call it. It's like a short URL. The local website's very long, so we're able to create wintersrecycle.org. So you click that and it goes to the actual local website that has all the information as well. We're doing Facebook ads, live videos, ads that talk about what's recyclable, what's not. And we have our communication specialist out in Reno who's created those videos. So they're in-house, they're in person. And she goes through and says, this is recyclable, that's not recyclable. So those are on Facebook, those are circulating as well.
I have another question about compostables. It seems to me that it's very hard to tell the difference between compostable containers and recyclable containers. How do you educate the public on the difference?
So basically anything 1 through 7 is recyclable. Compostable is going to be anything that's not like a plastic. So anything with like a fiber in it can be compostable. So it's really just kind of breaking down those specific questions to the customers, as well as some of the educational materials that we have that you'll be able to see. But for the most part, we're all very lucky here, I think, to have Yolo County as the final destination for all of the compostable material. That's really the only facility that I know that takes the most items. They have an array of items that they accept compared to a lot of other places. For example, Clean World try to do clean food waste only, and they're no longer in business. Yolo County partners with Napa Recycling, who takes a lot of compostable materials such as the paper plates, the napkins, the paper towels, the compostable food packaging. And then the fact that they're building their digesters now is going to actually be able to accept even more products.
One of the things that came up in our previous meeting was the use of compostable bags that people can use for their green waste collection in their kitchens.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So again, to Yolo County, thanks to them, you guys are able to use certified BPA compostable bags to collect any of your organic material. So whether it's grass clippings, food waste, anything like that. And I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. They also will accept, Yolo County will accept clear bags. So if the bag is clear and you can see in it, they will accept it. We have been told that Northern Recycling, as long as they can see in the bag, they will rip it open and take out the compostable material. So whether it's compostable or just a clear bag, they will accept that in the organics material. But not recycling. Recycling, no bags. Just leave them out.
Your green waste.
Yes, just the green waste with the brown lid.
I've been approached by a few people who have said that because I live on an alley and many people in this town do, the garbage cans are out on the alley and people just go by and throw stuff in their garbage cans or in mine also. How do we handle that, or what are we supposed to do?
It's a great question. Honestly, I'm not sure. For us, I can't really tell you how or what to do with the cart. I'm not an early riser, or else I'd say put it out in the morning at the curb right before pickup. Some people are, some people aren't. I know we personally set ours out the night before. But if it does become an issue, maybe possibly do it early in the morning.
What time and what's the earliest that you pick up?
I believe the earliest that we pick up is 6. We can't come out any earlier than that, I don't believe. I think it's 6 a.m. But if that is like a continuous issue, or if you know for certain that someone is dumping in it, then work with us and we can always try to credit that, or find other options or ways as well. Because, I mean, we obviously can't prevent everything, neither you guys can either, but we're always willing to work with everyone. Yeah, of course.
You talked about the charges for the, I believe those are just the residential charges, right? What about the commercial?
Yeah, so the commercial, we do have charges in place. They've been in place for a couple of years now. So recycling, or I'm sorry, overages, I believe are $50 or $55. I believe they're $50. And then that's contamination. I'm getting that confused. So contamination for commercial is $50 or $55, and then overages is $150. And like I said, that's been in place for a few years. But as you can see, it is working and it is cleaning up the city.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of points. It's awesome having Kayla here tonight, but the reality of waste management is that it's becoming increasingly more complex. The legislation that's going through the state right now, you know, you think, oh gosh, it's only 1 or 2 or 3 bills. They're very complex bills that are going through. We've gone from a period where you just throw everything in one can to you know, recycling and separating it, to having commingled. Now we've gone to green waste. Now we've got organics. They have to figure out how to manage absolutely all of this. And as things go to the destinations, whether it's going to the green waste or the organic facility, the reason why Waste Management has the fines, they've invested in all the technology to find all of this, is because they get their loads rejected. One person who either throws trash or contamination into a single load can change the destination of an entire load of a truck that they either has to be picked up and reloaded back into the truck or taken some other place. The waste bills that the customers in town pay are predicated on, this is going to the green waste facility, this is going to the landfill, this is going to the recycling facility. When that changes, it changes the entire business model for how this operates. The reality with recycling, they have to get it as clean as possible. Going out, they're coming up with stickers, plenty of information that's going out to people. And, unfortunately, you see, in some cases, the commercial folks are seeing it the worst. If you see somebody dumping something into somebody's trash bin that you obviously is not theirs, they're unloading the back of their truck, you need to call and report it. If somebody's dumping on the streets, we still allow people to dump all the green waste on the street. If you see somebody doing that at your neighbor's house and it's not theirs, they need to call and report that. They need to write down the license plate of the vehicle that's doing it, because that is basically polluting. In the case of many of the businesses, the one container that was overloaded, I couldn't see the picture as much, but what's happened in the downtown is that it started with one business. They got the first lock. They went in, they got a contamination hit. It was completely full of paint. Somebody had basically cleaned out their garage. Go over on the alley behind the laundromat, they dumped everything into there. Bang, contamination charge. Well, guess what? The person of that business locks it. Well, guess what? When they come over here, they see the bins behind City Hall in the alley here. People will go to where they think that they can dump it. If somebody is doing that, someone needs to report it. Now, in the downtown, they're locking everything up. The same in the residential side. If you see somebody putting stuff into your neighbor's container and it's not them, someone needs to call the folks out on it, because now there's a financial ramification for it. And it all just gets to where waste management is going now, is that they're keeping an eye, people are gonna get fined for it, and it's just gonna keep on happening. And it's turning out to be, they're working on the education, but eventually people need to take some responsibility for this stuff. And it's not easy for them. And I would guess that probably the legislation that's gonna come out of the state is gonna be squeezing waste management and the whole process even more. They're trying to come up with a very pure solution for various things, but educating everybody is very important.
And thank you, John, I appreciate that. We are held to a very, very strict contamination threshold. It's 0.05%. Some jurisdictions, have language that allows for 10%. Technically, that was already contaminated. With the national store that happened, the recycling market has changed the world. And like I said, we're held to a very, very, very strict standard. And so just trying to educate the customers and make sure we clean up the contamination is our number one priority. It's not to charge customers because it's a money thing, as a lot of people call it. It's not at all. It's really just trying to do the right thing for all the residents, as well as long-term progressive sustainability. So I think more or less, John's also trying to say there may be complaints once the residential program comes out. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of angry customers. Our call center is more than prepared for that. I'm more than prepared for that. Johanna Keys is our recycling coordinator. She's our boots on the ground. She's kind of our face as well. And she's been handling a lot of stuff with the downtown businesses as well. So please don't ever hesitate to give me a call or send me an email if you guys have any questions or concerns. And I can always come back out in a couple months and update you all and show you some more stats and show you the stats for the residential program and see how well that's doing as well. Thank you.
One of the things that I have to mention before, I know with all the deliveries that are made to people's homes now, we get things in boxes. There's a lot of cardboard.
A lot.
Hopefully people will be recycling. And most of the time, a lot of times people don't have, they're not able to fit them into their bins at home. So they'll go look for a cardboard recycle bin downtown.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. People aren't breaking down the cardboard boxes is another thing that we've noticed. And so some of the education that we're doing and ads that we're placing in the papers is about breaking down the boxes. I know I had a bad habit of not doing that, and my husband would follow me out and end up breaking them down after me. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. You're essentially paying for air. So you might as well fill it up as much as you can, break down those cardboard boxes, and save it for the next week if you have any space to save them. But don't pay for just air.
Question about that.
Yeah.
When you break down the boxes, they're all taped together. You have to pull that tape off too?
No, I know Amazon loves to tape it. Just cut it open, fold it down, and throw it in there. That's fine. Yeah, we don't need it crystal clear. If the guys can just pull it off on the belt as it's going down at the recycling facility, they will. But for the most part, that's fine.
You don't want to take it to the Little League field at the park either, because my wife's pretty good at looking for people's addresses.
Oh, good.
She actually takes it back and gives it back to them.
Oh, I love that.
She's
Have her
been
give me
known to
some
do that.
names. I'll send them some educational material.
She also started locking that one, but yeah, she's got a bad habit. She takes it right back and say, I think this is yours.
And
You lifted it.
when I was talking to some of the businesses, the oddest thing came out, and many of the businesses were under the assumption that they couldn't lock their recycling bins for some reason. They thought that within the city, they had to leave it open because anyone could recycle at any place. So if you have any discussions with anyone, I would maybe clarify that. Carol and I were a little shocked when we heard that. But yeah, many of the businesses were like, we didn't know we could lock our recycling. I'm like, please do. You can. We'll provide the lock for you guys. And like I said, that's helped a lot of the businesses keep their overages and contamination clean.
I had a question, speaking of cardboard boxes, everything comes with those little pillows, with the little plastic pillows for air. So those count as plastic bags?
Yeah, and those would go in trash.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't take any plastic. A lot of it just is, it's all trash. But also too, because it can get caught in our conveyor belt and it can shut down the entire plant. which is a lot of work. But yeah, definitely.
Just wanted to
try.
clarify.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we have another
I'm here all night, you
All
guys.
right. What about those, they're not styrofoam, I believe they're starch that dissolve in water. Packed peanuts that
They're made of starch.
they're made of starch, you put them in water, well then you've got this bucket full of contaminated water. What do you do with those? Now they're starch, if they're
I would
starch,
think compostable.
that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I would put that in your organics bin, especially if it's like a starch that breaks down, yeah.
Yeah, when you put water on it, it dissolves, so it goes in compost.
Mhm. Yeah, because most of your compost is gonna eventually liquefy anyways, so it would just mix in with that.
Good, thank you.
Other question?
You
You
don't
have any
know?
tips for people? Are there green waste containers at home that are having trouble with insects like flies? gnats?
Oh, yeah, so there's a bunch of things that you guys can do. Some people go as far as freezing it. You can wrap it in newspaper. You can put it in brown paper bags is also the other thing as well.
What about like just your lawn clippings that are traps? Yeah.
You know, I will get back to you. I know there are some tricks. Marissa Jeweler, who actually runs the facility at the landfill, has some amazing tips. I'll get some from her and send them your way.
I think that would be good to send out and some of your information.
Yeah.
Sending out people.
How-to tips, yeah, and we'll make sure to include those in the residential newsletters that go out as well. We have another one coming up, so I'll make sure we put some organic tips in there.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're gonna move on. Item 2, which was the downtown merchants trash enclosure, has been pulled from the agenda tonight because we didn't feel like we had enough information to make an informed decision, so we were gonna pull that from the agenda. We'll move on to item 3 for the discussion, which is the housing issues overview.
All right, Mayor and Council, I thought I'd take us up to about 25,000 feet and talk about housing. I know it's going to become a big issue, and as we start moving through the summer, with the end of the legislative session coming up, there's going to be a lot of discussion about this. So I thought it might be beneficial to kind of step up a little bit and talk a little bit about housing and how it relates to the city of Winters. Just a couple of things. The governor, without question, has listed housing as his #1 priority, housing and homelessness throughout the state. One of the main efforts that we're seeing in SACOG is anticipation of ramping up towards the regional housing needs allocation that I'll talk with. Our housing element of our general plan is set to expire in 2021. And one of the big issues that's being dealt with in Winters right now, we essentially have 0 vacancy throughout the entire city. Unless you can go out and afford to buy one of the brand new homes out in one of the new subdivisions, Stones Throw or Heartland, you're probably out of luck. If you want to rent anything in town, there's absolutely no availability. Tonight, what I'd like to do is, basically I'm going to hit on 9 areas. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on things, but I will kind of give you an overview of all of them. We'll talk about the city's housing element. We'll talk a little bit about affordable housing. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the state policy, some of the regional policy, some of our city policies. We'll talk about infill housing and some of the things that the city has in place for that. Give you a very simple and easy primer on densities. I'll answer the big question, what's our growth rate in the city? And I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the directives and from the staff perspective, what we tell developers and property owners. A couple of fun facts about the city's general plan. If you go onto the Office of Planning and Research website, which is the one that dictates what goes in general plans, they will tell you that housing is a matter of vital statewide importance, and the attainment of decent housing is one of the state's highest priorities. And as you start going into the development of the housing element, you are going to need to look at how they address that. For us, the City of Winters housing element is on a cycle consistent with the development of the SACOG Regional Housing Needs Allocation Plan, better known as RENA. Ours, the last time it was adopted was in 2013, and we received an 8-year certification. They have a 5-year plan, and they have an 8-year certification. In our case, we got the 8-year certification, which was good, and it coincides with the RENA numbers. There are essentially 7 strategic goals that the city's housing element has. First is to provide adequate land for a balanced range of various types of housing. Second is the idea of maintenance, improvement, and rehabilitation of existing housing. The second is to encourage energy efficiency, promote affordable housing, the idea of ensuring that adequate services exist to support that housing, that equal opportunity will exist, and finally is the idea of preserving existing affordable housing. There are really a whole litany of implementation goals. I'll just go through them very quickly. The broad mix of housing types, very critical. Everything from the big houses to small apartments and second units. Inclusionary housing is just another word for affordable housing. The idea that we have housing for all segments of the population, multi-family units for families. The Orchard Village is a very good example of that. The idea of expediting processing, the idea that housing is not hampered by how the city approaches housing. And that gets right to the idea of avoiding excess costs to housing. Housing is very expensive. The more process and the longer it takes, that puts a burden on that. And that's looked at in not a very positive manner. The state's put a high priority on the idea of secondary units, also on the idea of mobile and manufactured housing. A strategic goal for us absolutely falls into the idea that we're going to have collaboration with nonprofits. That's how affordable housing works in California. The idea of providing incentives for developers to build housing. And then finally, the idea of local builders. Talking a little bit about affordable housing in Winters. Couple of key things, and it goes back to when the city's general plan was originally adopted in 1992. Upon the adoption of that plan, the city was immediately entered litigation with Legal Services of Northern California in the Michelle v. Winters, City of Winters decision. And there were really 3 reasons why the city was litigated against. One was that there was no affordable housing plan that was included in the general plan. There was no strategy. And probably one of the biggest ones that still exists today is that the city in the general plan located the vast majority of the densities which could support housing in the flood overlay area, and I'll show you that. When you look at the zoning map here, these are the highest densities that the city has, and all of that property is in the flood overlay area. Legal Services, who actually has become a very important partner of the city's, won a decision. They went into the Yolo County Court, and they were asking for one main thing, was the idea that we would have a 10% inclusionary housing requirement through the city, throughout the entire city. The Yolo County judge gave us 15, and we have that today. The 15% inclusionary housing dictates citywide. It's a stipulated judgment. We have a responsibility to the courts. We have a responsibility to legal services for annual reporting. Of the 15%, 6% of the housing is dedicated to going to very low affordable units. And then the remaining 9% goes to low and moderate income. After the Michelle Winters decision, they went through the updated the overall housing element. A couple of things. One is that we have an affordable housing steering committee group that involves people from the community at large, planning commissioners. We have a representative from legal services who sits on it. Our housing economic development manager, Dan McGuire, is currently the one who staffs it. We have Yolo Housing, a very good group. If you look throughout the city, I added up all the units, and actually I'll show them to you. There's a couple of goals of affordable housing. One of those is the idea that affordable housing will be located throughout the city, not necessarily centralized and spread. And this map right here does a great job of showing where all the affordable housing goes. If this is east, as you march through the city, the affordable housing actually is located pretty much spread throughout the whole city. If you add it all up, there are 335 affordable units. Each one of those units has some type of a
affordability restriction.
Yeah,
covenant.
it has a covenant and a restriction on it. It's 55 years
For rental units.
for rental.
45 for sale, with the exception of moderates, which city council set at 10 years.
Yeah, so some of the projects that, if you add it all up, our affordable housing of the total stock as of the count that I had last week, 335 units means that 14.56% of the housing in town is affordable with some type of restriction. I will point out a very good example of this implementing the overall affordable housing strategy is the Orchard Village Apartments. I think our team did an exceptional job on that. It includes a wide range of units. It has family units. It actually has 4-bedroom units in it. And that was an exceptional collaboration between staff. I know the Affordable Housing Steering Committee worked on it. We actually worked extremely well with Legal Services of Northern California. Originally, it was going to be a project that had 88 units. We actually, 88 units simply would not have worked well on the site. So what we did was we actually reduced the number of units, but the deal was that we kept the same number of bedrooms. And what that did was it provided for all the family units. Talking a little bit about state housing policy. State of California lists housing as the single highest economic cost for residents within the state. In 2018, there were about 77,000 units that were built in the state. The governor has indicated that he set a goal for about 3.5 million units within the planning periods that are coming up.
By 2025.
Which is pretty ambitious. To talk a little bit about some of the legislations out there, there were over 200 housing bills that were submitted within this year's legislative session. And that follows last year, which was an absolute boatload of of housing bills that came down. Um, the one, and I sent out the report, and sure enough, they pulled it, but the biggie this year was SB 50, which was really going to beef up the overall density on things. That was pulled, but if you look from a strategic standpoint, it makes sense that they pulled that because as the RENA numbers are coming out for the entire state of California, bringing legislation down while most of the state is putting together their housing elements, probably strategically my guess is that the legislation is going to have a lot of carrot and a lot of stick in it. So we'll see. So dense housing, rent control and stabilization is a big deal throughout the whole state. Anybody who's got a college-age kid is probably hearing that they're getting evicted and rents are going up crazy. The idea of tenants' rights, preservation of existing housing, and trying to expand tax credits. One of the things that the city will benefit from is SB 2, which you'll hear that the governor and the legislature have thrown about $500 million towards housing for cities. In our case, we'll get $125,000 to plan for expanded housing development in our community. RENA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. Kind of the way that it works, if you're going to go down, State Department of Finance is the one who establishes the numbers for the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. That's given to the State Department of Housing and Economic Development. The Department of Housing and Community Development. That is then transferred down to the regional planning bodies, and that's how it gets to SACOG with us. Essentially, the RENA numbers are debated, and Councilmember New is going to be right in the middle of it, as our staff. It seems like probably every other week there's some type of a meeting or seminar or something that we have to plug into. But the RENA corresponds with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So they're plans that are adopted almost in a simultaneous way. In our case, the next planning period will be from 2021 to 2029. This is going to be the sixth cycle for RENA. But HCD will go through, they'll calculate those numbers. We in turn are going to go through a process of putting together our housing element. And it looks like most of the RENA numbers are going to come out probably late in the summer, probably August or maybe into September time. And with this being a huge priority with the governor, and since the Department of Finance basically works for the governor, the anticipation is that it'll probably be pretty ambitious as far as the numbers that come out. From all that, housing elements are developed. SACOG puts together what is known as the Regional Housing Needs Plan, and we all send off our housing elements. One of the things that I've included, this may be an 8-page staff report, but I'll tell you that if you actually click on all the fun stuff that I put in there, it's over 1,500 pages long, and I hope that everybody just loved reading about housing and HCD, the best. But one of the things that I included in there is they look for various, the state gives recommendations. The way that your housing element is going to look, I think, is going to be predicated on how the RENA process eventually takes itself out. But some of the things that we do have, our housing element in 2013, we got the 8-year certification, and a lot of that was predicated on the fact that we included a lot of the best practices and we have those things available. If you look, we allow for pre-manufactured buildings, the idea of accessory dwelling units that we have on the books, single room occupancy, farm worker housing, supportive housing, transitional housing. So we actually have all these things, and I've tried to link all those in the staff report to hopefully give folks a little bit of an overview. Infill housing, and when we worked on the downtown master plan, infill housing was viewed as probably one of the most important aspects of what we do. We've got the master plan, which calls for mixed uses. I'll show you the density chart, but what we did was we moved forward. We put together our form-based code, which allows for the highest densities anywhere in the city. The idea is to go vertical with the housing to allow for that mixed uses. The idea that you have some type of commerce happening on the first floor. On the second floor, you could have some type of business or office that would happen. And then as you go up, you hear a lot of terms, the new urbanism and smart growth, the idea of connectivity and all these things happening are all in there. So when you think about infill and you want to see what the city of Winters has on the books, that's that. I've included in this, and you know, I kind of complained to everybody about putting slides that nobody can read, but and this is me. But in the staff report, I've included all the densities, and it goes from everything from agricultural, which allows 1 unit on 5 acres of land, all the way to the highest density, which is 10.1 to 28 units per acre in the downtown. As you look at the various zoning and all the different colors that are on the charts that we have, it'll tell you how many units that we're going to get out of all of these. There's a little bit of flexibility. We have some planned commercial. We also have our commercial zoning, which allows for multifamily and apartments to go in there. So there's a little bit of a sway that goes back and forth in determining how many units are out there. One of the things I wanted to talk that I'm always asked, okay, so what's our growth rate? And so what I've done is I've taken about a 10-year period and tried to, in our estimations, and these are the same numbers that we use as far as our budgeting goes. And, you know, who knows what the economy is going to do. But as you look, I've just taken the units based on 2,300 units and kind of taken the numbers for 2020 through 2025. That number is based, the number of 78 is based wholly on just the cycle of our understanding of how long it takes to build a house and in chunks of 16. As we've talked with the various developers, they can build in groups of about 16 units. And if you add up the timetable for the projects that we have, and by the way, this would build out everything that we have entitled in the city. So if you just look at the low, it's been about 1.14% down to, and it would get as high as 3%. The percentages are kind of relative, obviously, because as we get into looking at the units, a 3% growth rate for Vacaville is much different than a 3% numerical number for the city. So what's the city staff telling to developers and property owners? One of the things that we've really tried to emphasize as we've talked with folks, first off, is, and you know, it's kind of the don't kill the messenger, but the job of staff planning is to advocate for the housing element of the general plan. That is the key focus. If you go back to what I mentioned about what the strategic goals of the housing element are, That's what we're telling people as they come in. And the idea that they need to come in and follow the housing element. We also stress the idea of jobs and housing. And there's been a lot of hoopla over the fact that, yep, has staff been talking with folks from Bellevue North and other property owners? Absolutely we have. That's what cities do, and that's what planning departments do. And but some of the biggest things that we've talked about is the idea of bringing balance, jobs and housing balance. That's a critical policy in the city's general plan, and it's one of the things that we've been emphasizing. One thing I would encourage people to do, on June 4th, we're going to have a joint workshop with the City Council and the Planning Commission to go over the Economic Development Committee's report. I'm going to do everything we can to get publicity out about it. People need to read that and look at it because it coincides with a lot of the things that we're looking at, and it also coincides with a lot of the controversy. What are we doing about jobs? Why would we even think about looking at some of these things? And they do. We also talked about market rate rental housing. I can tell you that I met with a property owner last week, and we were very direct. We need market rate rental housing. Anybody sitting in this room today that lives in Winters, if you've got, whether you're in your own house or whether you're in an apartment, it's a very precarious situation because frankly, if you had a pipe break in your house and you needed to move out of your house while it was fixed and remodeled, where would you go? It wouldn't be Winters, California. You would have to find a house someplace else because right now there's zero vacancy throughout the entire city. Market rate rental is also very expensive. We fall in within an economic corridor which is more coincides with Solano County than with other areas to the east of us. In order to qualify for a market rate rental unit within the Solano area, which we qualify, you have to make $36 an hour, $74,880 or $855 to qualify for a market rate rental. The market is so squeezed. In Winters, the typical apartment is going for about $1,850 a month, very high. And the bottom line is there's no availability. People need housing. You hear about people, you'll hear that people are one paycheck away from losing their housing. And that's absolutely true because all the affordable housing is filled up and it's not being built at a very rapid pace. The market rate housing, the market rate rental simply doesn't exist. I think it's interesting in Winters, just the little Facebook chatter about, gosh, do you see that house over on such and such street? Do you see how much they're asking for a monthly rent on that? It's well into the 2000s on what people are getting for a house. We're also telling people about developers and landowners about affordable housing. We've got Michelle V. Winters. We've got an affordable housing steering committee. We've got a housing element which stresses the importance of affordable housing. And it's critical for us. The Winters community is very diverse and our income levels are all over the place. Before any project or subdivision, we've got one property owner that we're talking with. Before anything advances, they have to go in and see Dan McGuire about developing an overall affordable housing plan for how that's going to be taken care of. We've got our affordable housing steering committee, great group of people. They come together and they basically run the economics of how the affordable housing plans will be brought forward. The idea of planning, yep, as we were talking with Bellevue North and everybody, stressing planning is absolutely critical to how we go about executing housing within the city. For the lack of it, one of the things that we try to avoid, and we've been very successful in the downtown as far as putting together master plans and executing on those. The idea of doing additional planning is very important. And then finally, probably the one thing that I will absolutely stress that I'm guilty of is the idea of pushing downtown infill development, if we can get that. The downtown is the core of our economy in Winters. The greatest advantage that we have to do some very wonderful things. We over the weekend, we've got absolutely incredible publicity about the type of downtown that we've evolved to over the years. The idea that we would compound upon that, but also establishing development which has connectivity, which allows people to walk or bike to whatever they're going to do. So we really stress that. So basically, that's my 25,000 foot view on everything. Obviously, housing is a big deal. This is something that we started at 25,000 feet, and I think that probably Councilmember New is going to bring things back from SACOG that are going to get us down to a microscopic view at some point. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council or anybody has.
I think that, I mean, what John's saying is very true, that we have a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about it, but you can look at it as the glass half full or the glass half empty. I'm hoping that, although I know the RENA numbers are going to go up, I'm hoping that they don't go up quite as much as John's thinking they're going to, and he could be right. I just like to be optimistic, because I think that the jobs housing balance is going to be one of the things that is going to be figured into the RENA numbers. And as I've talked to people at SACOG, they've assured me that that will happen. And if it does, that keeps us a little bit lower. And obviously we want to create jobs here, but I don't think that we could at this point create as many jobs as we need houses. So nobody knows what our numbers are going to be yet. And as you say, it'll be probably the early fall that we'll get our numbers. But I'm going to be optimistic. That's all I can say.
Well, I want to thank you for your presentation, and I'm really excited to talk about housing. I like the subject. During your presentation, you mentioned connectivity a couple times, and isn't part of the idea of connectivity the air quality and reduction of greenhouse gases along with the transportation corridor? So with that in mind, I was just wondering, wouldn't it be helpful for us to have a climate action plan in place before we start the direction of what to do with whatever our numbers are going to be? And I did some outreach today to find out, what could they be possibly, and they could be raised 50 to 80% higher than it was in the prior RENA cycle. And that's without taking jobs into consideration, so there's no way to know it, but would it be helpful to have a climate action plan in place before wrestling with this demand?
Yeah, well, the staff's working on that literally as we speak, on things. The reality for us, well, we've gone through, we got the one grant through the Climate Compact. We have a preliminary report on an overall strategic plan for climate issues. We have a draft climate action plan. Some of the numbers need to be updated, And matter of fact, Carol and I had a phone meeting with Heidi Shooten, our project planner, and people from Ascent Environmental who came up with this strategy, some of the strategic elements of it. And we talked about how we would move some things forward. We actually have to set up a time with the city attorney to go over a bunch of this stuff on how we might advance it. But you know, one of the biggest things that we talked about is the idea that we would merge some of the strategic stuff with actual planning elements to be able to move forward, because then you go from conceptual to actionable items that you would do to actually address that. And so we're working on it, and we would like to bring those things forward.
I also wanted to mention that, you know, I think the Orchard Villager project is one of the best examples of taking the unit number and making it serve our community. And I was just wondering how hard of a lift it would be to do a project like that now. I mean, you know, it was a hard lift then. What's the reality of doing something like that now?
Affordable housing is really tough because so many of the funding sources are absolutely just set up. On the federal level, you've had changes in federal tax law, which have limited various tax credits that can come down on things. One of the biggest issues that we deal with is the fact that the state killed redevelopment. And so much of our success, if you go to practically every project, or most of them, Winners 1, Winners 2, for Orchard Village, they all have redevelopment money in them. The Blue Mountain Senior Affordable is going to have redevelopment money in them. Unfortunately for us, we are now the little fish that has to swim into the ocean and kind of fight for some money. So Orchard Village would be a miracle. But you know what? The idea that we come up with a plan, the one thing that I'm very proud of the city about is that we've delivered on every single project. We haven't given up. And many of these projects take many, many years to put together. So Orchard Village came together pretty quickly. 3 or 4 years. Blue Mountain Terrace apartments have taken 6 or 7 years. Dan can't retire until that thing gets thrown to the ground.
That's right.
Yeah. But they really, I think that the challenge for the state is identifying the affordable housing need, which in California is massive. But at the same time, where's the money going to come from? And for us, so when the Michelle v. Winters stipulation came down, the judge immediately pointed right at our redevelopment agency that we have, Winters Community Development Agency, and said, okay, you're going to go through, you're going to amend the housing element, you're going to amend your redevelopment plan to deliver all this stuff. The first bond financing that we did back in 2004, when we did that, half of the money went to affordable housing. Redevelopment was kind of an 80-20 thing. 20% of the revenue was supposed to go to affordable housing. In our first financing, almost half of the money went to the affordable housing projects. And that money financed 2 major projects. One was Winners 1 apartments, and then it helped facilitate the construction of Winters 2. And by the way, the story about Winters 1 is that literally one day I'm going through the Winters Express and I'm looking at the ads in there. And there was this dinky little ad that had been taken out. Most of the affordable housing in our area had been funded through USDA grants from back in the 1970s and 80s. There was this dinky little ad. And Dan Sokolow, who was our community development director at the time, I looked at this thing and I walked over with the paper. I go, who's selling a 41-unit apartment complex? They're offering it for sale. And we're like, oh my goodness, that's the Winters 1 Apartments. We rushed in with Chuck out of Davis and formulated a plan to buy that thing. Or that 41 unit would have gone all market rate. And right now it's probably, it's our longest standing affordable project that we have in town.
Thank you, Mayor and council members and city manager. I just wanted to take a moment because the Affordable Housing Steering Committee came up, and I would like to acknowledge Al Viacio. I think he and Jack Graff were probably on that committee from when it was formed. And so you have a community member here that spent well over 2 decades serving the community in that body, trying to provide solid policy advice to council and to planning commission, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, I appreciate you giving us this overview. I know all the council members have seen this information before, we've dealt with it, all this, but it's good. It's a good refresher for us, but it's also good for everybody that, that is not familiar with this kind of information, to hear it and to kind of see the types of things that we have to deal with when it comes to all the planning process and that type of thing. So I appreciate you giving this update on it. I think you put together a very nice overview of it. And the one thing that concerns me are the RENA numbers that will come out, and how we're gonna deal with that. But that's something that is basically mandated to us by the state. We just have to figure out how to make it work for our town. So that's a challenge, but we have to do it. One of the things also you mentioned is the downtown infill. I mean, I think that would be great to have some type of commercial with residential above, that type of thing. But that would be something where I would like to encourage our assembly members, representing us, to come up with some incentives that would help spur some of that development, because getting someone to just come in and do it on their own, I don't think we're gonna see that for a long time. So we need to, yeah. So getting some of that kind of mixed use development, I know they don't generally provide incentives for that type of development. They do for all the affordable housing, but not so much for the other type. So something for us to mention to our representatives. The jobs housing balance is also something that's key, which I know we will be talking about that more in the meeting June 4th with the EDAT committee on the planning commission, city council. So there's some good recommendations in there, I think, that we'll have some discussion on. And the last one I had is, I know we've done a lot for the affordable housing. We have the Blue Mountain Terrace coming up, which will add to those numbers. You showed us that 15%, almost right under 15% so far, affordable housing. When we add these units, those were not calculated in that number, correct? I don't think.
I don't believe they were.
I don't think they were, so that'll put us,
I don't think it is.
that puts us up pretty high for our percentage of affordable housing. We're doing very well in that regard. And with that, I don't have any more comments. Anybody else? I know I have at least one person in the public that would like to comment on this. It's in the paper, Kate Laddish.
Thank you, Member Yasi. Kate Laddish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21. And I'd just like to start by thanking the city council and staff for looking ahead to an upcoming update to the housing element of the general plan, and then also considering how we'll meet the RENA once CACOG has those numbers. And I mean, I really appreciate all the work that went into the packet. That's a tremendous resource there, so thanks. And at an American Planning Association training workshop that I attended this weekend, Chelsea Payne of Ascent Environmental, and that's the organization that we're working with on the climate action plan, emphasized that the housing element and transportation elements of general plans are increasingly linked, and that's especially in order to achieve greenhouse gas reduction goals. And she emphasized also that a lot of the goal of RENA is to make sure that there is appropriate amount of affordable housing. And so it was good to hear those from in a different conversation as well. And then of course, as we work with the housing element update, that we make sure that then that would maintain consistency within our general plan as we move forward with that. And let's see. And as we move into updating the housing element or doing the general plan refresh or completing the climate action plan or consider any proposals from any developers, I think we could set ourselves up for RENA success by considering the increasing density and pursuing it much as has been described already. Currently, though, the densities envisioned in the general plan and zoning ordinance for future development in the north area aren't compatible with anything except the suburban bedroom type development, and that I'm concerned that if we pursue that model of development, that we'll end up actually kind of creating a difficulty for ourselves, because if we have low density development, we'll use up the land that we have and yet have not met the RENA goals. And related to that, that's something that I'm trying to keep in mind is that if we decide to pursue annexing land, that adding that land to city limits, I assume would increase our RENA numbers rather than be a way that we could satisfy the numbers that we receive for CACOG as defined by our current city limits. And let's see, so moving forward, I'd just like us to consider some novel ways to increase the affordability, density, and climate compatibility of the housing that we plan for and approve. And so I really appreciate the city manager highlighting the rental availability and affordability, and especially the market rate rental housing and subsidized. Building more of what we just have or are building now is probably unlikely to shift the situation in a way that would help us meet our goals. And so I'd suggest that we consider, whether it's doing some studies or learning from some experts in some other jurisdictions, what's worked. If we tweak our model a little bit and pursue something like co-housing that increases density and affordability, and in many cases, based on the design, can increase or help you meet greenhouse gas reductions. Would that be something for us to pursue as we look into future developments? Regarding affordable housing, I'll just say that 400 Morgan Street, number 21, which I keep giving as my address, that is Winter Senior Apartments. That is a USDA rural development property, and everybody who lives there is either a senior and or has different disabilities. It's subsidized housing. It was actually the case study for an article that was in the Christian Science Monitor in the very end of December, looking at USDA rural development properties. And the issue with that is that they time out, and kind of as described. And so even though they're kind of a long time frame, once they time out, there's a chance that they're out. And so I'd just like us to keep that in the conversation as we go forward. That basically once the owner has repaid the initial loan, then they can leave the subsidy program, and there's a lot of incentive to do so. And so even though it's a long time frame, we do a good job of thinking long term here. And so let's just keep that in mind as we go forward with the discussion. And just kind of continuing something that the city manager and I have talked about, like the first city manager session, with the job housing balance, the idea of if we want to maximize that, which I think would be a great idea, and if we want to make sure that there are jobs here, that people who live here and will live here, that those are the jobs that would work to keep them here, that we figure out what those are rather than guessing. And so if there are other jurisdictions who have found an appropriate study that worked for that, great, rather than us having to reinvent the wheel. And the last thing is that I'd request that perhaps council ask staff to schedule a presentation by city planner Craig Chu of SACOG to just give a presentation about RENA, just so that we have the information from them once the numbers are out, or just about the process, just so that we get the information just directly from them, and we can move forward with this discussion to set ourselves up for success. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
And I'll just say, if anybody has any questions about winter senior apartments or the subsidy program with that, I'd be more than happy to do.
I just have a comment, Kate, because of that article, well, in conversations with other people through the league, the mayor of Cloverdale said, when I told her about, what happened here, she said, this is happening, all these notices for eviction are happening, because one of their buildings turned, but the city didn't notice in time. But that, because those are rural loans only given to rural areas, it's happening across the state in rural cities, like our own.
Yeah, and it's what Cloverdale is experiencing is happening throughout rural communities in America, California.
Yeah.
The looming problems that will get worse.
If I can interject on the two USDA properties, or where there was USDA funding, council may remember that the city assisted in financing a remodel refresh at the Almondwood Apartments. And that was one of those USDA properties that was at risk of converting to market rate. And with that rehabilitation, new affordability covenants were added. Similarly, the Winter Senior Apartments went through a rehab modernization a couple of years ago, and that involved funding from TCAC, and similarly, that extended affordability covenants on that particular multifamily complex.
Do you happen to know offhand the
Rena?
No. Yeah, you're the only one that does.
Well,
Do you know offhand when those expired, now that we've done the remodeling?
I can get you that answer.
Okay.
I don't have it off the top of my head, but yeah, it's typically gonna be a 55-year extension.
Extension.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will, at the lab, staff is participating in a monthly meeting with SACOG on the development of the RENA numbers, and they're playing it very close to the chest. But at the most recent meeting that staff attended, they finally kind of threw out a range, and that range that was stated in that meeting was a 50 to 80% increase in our overall RENA number. So if you take the last cycle's RENA number, which was 380, you can do various maths as to how much the overall RENA number, if that number holds up. And then where they try to tweak it from that number, it has to do more with the affordable units within that RENA allocation.
So another question, do you know when they calculate the RENA numbers? Do they use only the land in the city limits, or they also consider the?
To the best of my knowledge, it's not based on
It's the general plan area. The housing element is for the general plan.
Our general plan includes those two.
Yes, it includes.
Yeah, I don't.
Because it all correlates back to your general plan. It has nothing to do with your city plan. It all correlates back to the general plan in that it says that the city has to adequately plan and zone for the units that come up. And obviously the housing element becomes the strategic document for how you do that.
but for the SACOG reason, to me, the most interesting component of RENA is that for the whole SACOG region, whatever that number is, don't care which jurisdiction you're in, 40% of that number is affordable units. And when you put that in the context, we've done, I think, a very credible job here in Winters, and it's been a struggle to get to the 15% that we're at, and yet you get a RENA allocation, and 40% of that allocation is affordable units. So that's the real stretch.
Questions, comments?
So, last comment.
One more?
I just, out of all the things that, cities work on with pension and all the other heavy lifts that we have to do, housing is the most complex at this time, and also, probably, the most important thing that we'll wrestle with overall. And that's probably the next, 5 to 10 years.
Okay, that's the end of the discussion items. We'll have the city manager's report next.
Two really quick items. First, today I went up to the ribbon cutting for the new pool up in Sparta, and it was wonderful. For some of us who have been around here for a while, we understand that in small communities it takes time, and oh my goodness, I celebrated a couple of people who more than 10 years ago came in here, and we sent them out very dejected from putting together an overall plan and budget for how to put together a pool and all this stuff. And we worked cooperatively with them to write a grant, and they got the grant. And to see that pool open today, they got a ball field, soccer field, and it's wonderful. And so one of the people gets up and says, when we started on this, my daughter was 1 year away from starting kindergarten. Up walks her daughter, who's this beautiful young woman who has just graduated from her PhD program or something. It was just like, oh my goodness. So it took a while. So Sparta is obviously our sister community in West Yolo, and I congratulate to them. And then the only other thing, 4:30 on Thursday is the second installment of the Ask the City Manager series. So I'll be here, and for what we don't have any questions, I'm going to make a form filler, maybe about housing, maybe about trash, who knows? But 4:30 until roughly 5:30. Anybody who's here at 5:30 has to follow me out to my favorite place to get libation, and we can continue the questions there.
4:30 to what?
4:30 to 5:30. But we can end earlier.
And on that, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:50. Thank you, everyone.
I'm gonna come and bring my recycling trash, just show you what.
You need to bring your compostable cup. I got an earful from my brother about it.
So, yeah, I thought she'd say more about that, that's what's contaminating the stream, is people confusing compostable and recyclable, and then they put it in there. and it contaminates.